Everyone, I am going to talk about the upcoming new moon in Libra today and give you a heads up of the energy that we can probably expect with this new moon, because it's a little different than your typical Libra new moon. So let's take a look. So typically when it comes to a Libra moon or a Libra new moon, we think of the areas that Libra kind of rules, which include relationships, partnerships, contracts, beauty, especially the beauty we put in our environment or surround ourselves with, anything dealing with legal, justice, or fairness. But this new moon is going to be a little different. And the main reason for that is this moon is ruled by Venus, which is currently retrograde. And so that kind of flips everything on its head. So Venus rules things like relationships, partnerships, and our finances. And so when it's retrograde, it's kind of flipping those things backwards. It's like when you think about Mercury retrograde. Mercury rules communication and the devices we use to communicate. And so when it comes to a Mercury retrograde, you hear how communication is going to go haywire and you need to back up your computer. So the same thing applies with a Venus retrograde. So with a Venus retrograde, our relationships get turned upside down a little bit. The dynamic shifts, things may not be working quite the same way within our relationships. We may find ourselves reevaluating relationships, wondering if something needs to change in the relationship. And so with the Libra new moon, to me this moon is setting up to not so much feel like a Libra new moon, but more of a Scorpio new moon, and I'll get into that on the next slide a little bit. But with the Venus retrograde, instead of focusing, because typically with a Libra new moon, you're thinking of fresh beginnings, new starts, and because it's Libra, a lot of the time the focus is on relationships. But with Venus being retrograde, this is not a time to start a new relationship or a new partnership. You definitely don't want to get married right now. Those are kind of the cardinal things of you don't do during Venus retrograde. So this new moon is shaping up to be a little funky, and let's continue our dive into why that is. So the other thing impacting this new moon is also making a square to Pluto and Capricorn. And much like Venus is currently retrograde and therefore kind of going on this underworld evaluation journey where Venus is really going inward and reevaluating and taking a really hard look at relationships and finances and things within those areas, Pluto is kind of also doing this because Pluto deals with the underworld. And so when you see a square in astrology, a square usually means tension. And so you have the new moon, which, traditionally wants to be the new beginning, the new starting point, kind of having this square, this tension, this tug of war with Pluto. And Pluto rules all things dealing with death, rebirth, and regeneration. And so basically what that means is we are definitely going through the underworld. We're definitely going on this introspective, reflective journey, looking and reevaluating and maybe deciding what we don't need anymore, what no longer serves us, what we need to let go of, what needs to burn away. You're seeing a lot of this kind of be reflected in the news right now. And I do mention this a little bit in my blog posts for the October moon forecast. And so that's why I say this new moon may feel a little bit more like a Scorpio new moon, which Scorpio definitely deals with death and rebirth and regeneration than a traditional Libra new moon. So perhaps you might be wondering at this point, so what does that mean for your new moon intention? So personally, I am not going to be setting my traditional new moon intention for this upcoming new moon. Instead, I am going to be using the energy to really get reflective and write, in a journal about different areas of my life and where I feel like things currently stand, and just take a really good look and see what changes maybe need to be made, what needs to be shifted, what I need to let go of. And I think that's a really good idea anyway to do, because we are kind of in the metaphysical and also very real, if you live near a farm, harvest season, where this time of year we do find ourselves starting to make some shifts and changes, as a lot of us are in fall, looking forward to the winter and the cooler temperatures. And so I just encourage you to really slow down and pause and take a moment to feel what this energy for this new moon feels like to you, and do what you feel called to do. You may still feel called to set a traditional new moon intention, and that is totally fine. We all feel and interpret this energy slightly different based on how our own personal planets are placed in the sky when we were born. And so do what feels right for you, but also just a heads up, this is what is currently happening and what you may be feeling and seeing in the world around you for this Libra new moon.